So, well, thank you, Eva and Janina, for joining us today, and thank you, Bruno, as well. So, yeah, we're having here local to global. So, Janina, if you please, and Eva, have like the opportunity to introduce yourselves and let us know what you do.
Thank you very much. So I'm Janina Neumann. I'm a bilingual creative director, a trained graphic designer and intercultural trainer, as well as the business owner of Janina Neumann Design. I'm also the co-founder of Local to Global.
Hello, everyone, and I'm Eva Tunez Salvador. I'm a Spanish translator and the director of Genuine Translations, which is a UK-based multilingual translation company. And we help businesses thrive in other cultures by removing all the cultural and linguistic barriers. And I'm also the co-founder of Local to Global, together with Janina.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the introduction. And well, from our side, we got Bruno, okay, which is as well international business development here at AVASK. And what we're going to discuss today is like those kind of business expansion tips, the facts and things to actually have that kind of success and things to consider before launching. So we are gonna do a quick introduction, right, Bruno? If you want to go through that. We're going to start presenting. So, okay, so it's going to be tips to success at the point of expansion and localization. And as I mentioned, well, we're gonna present me and Bruno as business development officers here at AVASK. Yeah, Bruno, if you want to give an insight about who's AVASK, what do we do actually?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Lovely to be here among all of you. AVASK is a British company, but we are already having a webinar from our offices in Madrid. Also, we have offices in Italy, Germany, and France in Europe, and also the rest of the world, such as the States, Australia, Emirates. And here at AVASK, we are experts in taxation within the e-commerce environment. When you are selling through a marketplace or on your website, you have to take into account, the tax aspect. So we are in charge of register the VAT number in the countries that you are going to store your products, and after that we are in charge also of complying the local and distance sales. We are going to get into much more details as run in the presentation.
Thank you so much for the words. So the agenda, okay, so we are gonna have the kind of tips about how to sell directly into the European Union, having those 26 member states, having the opportunity to launch and target those clients. Cultural and branding consideration, which is going to be covered by Eva and Janina and their expertise, and also the platforms, how to work with them, and also the fiscal implications that we are going to face once we launch, and localization of your website and product listings, how important this is. So talking about launching, I would like to have talk about the e-commerce business plan. Many of you probably are startups, and this is the 12 steps that here at AVASK we consider that is quite important. The reason for this is because before launching and having starting this project, you will need to think everything carefully. Things to consider. E-commerce is not that easy, and you need to be well prepared as from the beginning, which is going to be your business formation, until the end of your journey, which is going to be the business exit that you want to do. Across all these paths that you are finding, you will see that VAT has a big important side, as also what we're going to discuss today, which is listing and localization, how to promote your product, give it a visibility, and that even if it's the same English here in the US and in the UK, probably you will need to use different wording. So yeah, expanding to Europe, factors to consider. We are talking about research. Make sure that you are taking into consideration, talk to your providers, have a good product sourcing, finding your demand, but also, yes, it's going have that look for the target, look for your clients, understand them. So that's the reason we got Eva and Janina today, so that they can provide the expertise and see that all these case studies that they have and see and how to make them successful within the e-commerce. And yes, definitely. So talking about European marketplaces, Bruno, you can talk about this in further detail, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Sebastian. The point is there are a lot of opportunities here in Europe mainland, let's say, considering Germany and France, let's say the biggest market that you can go. Um, a lot of well-known consumers that they used to buy products through not just Amazon as a marketplace, as maybe the biggest and most well-known marketplace, but also local marketplaces. Um, Needless to say, the UK, right, the biggest market in Europe, a lot of opportunities to sell to those consumers. Absolutely.
Thank you. So, well, when we're talking about requirements when selling in the EU, we're talking about that in those countries where you are going to be holding your stock, you will require the VAT number, which Bruno at the beginning was talking about, how AVASK can help you not only at the point of getting you that registration for VAT and also IORI, but also building that kind of strategy around the launching. You don't need to launch in many countries. Depending of the platform, depending of the business incorporation, we will understand what are your objectives and do the best strategy and business plan for you, right?
Exactly.
So within our services, not only VAT and filings, is also we also provide custom solutions as also the indirect or direct representation when bringing your products from abroad, also EPR and eco contributions. So yes, we're gonna be focusing right what is companies that are working around the Amazon environment, and that's the reason we're giving that highlight of what is an OMP. If you, Bruno, want to go in further detail with this.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there is a huge opportunity selling through an OMP. OMP is what is an OMP or how is an OMP considered? It's in a general terms and condition of the sale. We can read here. It's authorized to charge to the customer for payment, and it is involved ordering and delivering the goods. So there is huge opportunities because not just maybe through Amazon, which is the biggest and maybe like I said, the most well-known OMP or marketplace that you can sell. But here in Europe, you have, like Sebastian just said, a lot of countries with maybe a better position in some cases than Amazon that you can take into account in order to try to show or sell your products through those OMP or marketplaces.
That's correct. It's gonna depend as well about the niche the client is specializing. Probably in the long term, they are planning to actually move towards that kind of marketplace that are more
Mhm.
specialized in that kind of products.
Exactly.
So
Depends your
yeah,
product, depends the country that you want to expand. You can start from one country, uh, register the VAT in the country that you are going to store your products, then make distance sales or local sales that we are going to get into much more detail. But there are a lot of options that you can consider for sure.
hmm yes, what the OMP is covering most of the things that you say, payments, delivery, and so on, and this part of the terms and conditions that every seller must take a look into it. And yes, one of the new roles and responsibilities is like, well, not as new, but yes, they are gonna be considered deemed suppliers. That means that they will be collecting or remitting the VAT for all those sales. So I mean, that's a magnific opportunity to actually see the demand that you have in the European countries without having to expand in a pan-EU program. Let's say like this, little by little, you can start integrating your products in different and start storing them in different markets to the to in a timely manner. Let's say like this. Yeah, and well, talking about the UK, well, we are talking about we got those thresholds for distance sale, but that's something that we can work with ISS as well. That's something. But I mean, I much prefer when someone is actually launching and they got the products within the European Union as a market. It's much easier, and you got a bigger presence, let's say like this. Yeah, OSS illustration for non-European company, as I mentioned. Well, as you can start having your stock in one country, let's say Germany, and then, well, Amazon or any other kind of online marketplace facilitator will be well, collecting and remitting the VAT. If you are selling through your own website, well, that's not going to be the case, so that you will need to be registered and then collecting or remitting the VAT, which is going to be an additional administration burden for you. All right. And benefits about importing within the European Union. Well, there's countries that they got nice schemes about importing and giving you a better cash flow, such as Bruno. You want to go into this?
Sure, absolutely. When you start expanding your business, let's say within Europe, there are a lot of aspects that you have to take into account. One is, for example, Eva and Janina are going to talk about the translation and how to get and show your products in the same language, which is one of the most important aspect of the expansion. And also, when you have the possibility of post import the VAT accounting, that means that you are not going to need to pay the VAT importation, so you can use the money that you, let's say, in some way you save, not paying when you import your products into Europe, and use it to reinvest, or to have much more money as a cash flow, and try to improve and increase your business. This is an benefit VAT scheme that you can find in France, okay, also in Netherlands in some way. That's part of our services as a customs, and well, that's something that you can take into account by the moment that you decide to import your product and start your expansion into Europe.
That's correct. And thank you so much, Bruno. And yes, how AVASK operates, pretty much you will have a business development, which is going to be myself or Bruno. So we are going to understand your business, see what are your needs, and give you that kind of advice at the end of the day. Apart from that, then you will have three people with a team of three working for you, a business administration with administrator, which is gonna take control and take responsibility for the registration, and then we will allocate a tax advisor who is going to be taking care of all your fiscal implications in the different European countries. So any kind of notification from the tax authorities in a different language is gonna come back to you in your mother tongue, which is great.
Because the process of register the VAT numbers in each country is not easy sometimes. Most of the time, to say. So you are going to have this person, this physical person, join the process, taking care of the process, and try to do whatever it's within our reach in order to try to get the VAT as soon as possible, in order that you are going to be able to store your products, sell your products, and make the compliant. And like Sebastián said, finally, a person who is going to take charge of your account, just one person to manage and work with all your countries that you are selling in Europe. That's one of our key point of our services, and most important, to have a physical person to contact with and to make I don't know, any kind of question, and to keep you updated about all the legislation in Europe, in different countries. In fact, in AVASK, we talk more than 20 languages, from our HQ to our offices, since, like I said, we work with different tax authorities in different countries with different languages.
Having at the end of the day a person that you can rely on is quite helpful. So yeah, so yes, if you wanna contact us, well, you will have our email, and then well, we will be more than happy to give you that kind of support. Now we're moving to Janina and Eva, who are going to delight us with their presentation and give us more information, and we would love to learn from you guys as well.
Thank you, Sebastián and Bruno, for a wonderful presentation. It's been really informative. And thank you for inviting us. It's really a pleasure being here. As I said earlier, my name is Eva Tunez Salvador, and I'm a Spanish translator and director of Genuine Translations, and also co-founder of Local to Global with Janina. Janina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, so I'm Janina Neumann, and I'm also the co-founder of Local to Global. And Local to Global is based in the UK, and we've been going since 2020. And we've supported a number of clients by helping them overcome cultural, linguistic, and branding barriers when entering a new market. And I think we're ready to start the presentation. Brilliant, thank you. Fantastic. So on our agenda today, we'd like to cover why is it important to be culturally aware, product listings and brand stores, as well as how to sell more on Amazon. So why is it important to be culturally aware? Well, let's have a look at this tree. And the first step is we need to become aware of our own culture and how this affects how we view the world and interact with others. We can visualize culture as a tree. So when we meet someone, we can experience their culture through their behavior, which is indicated by the stories they tell and the language that they speak. And so you get to know them, we start to understand their beliefs and why they behave in the way that they do. This is less obvious at first, but this is where the behavior stems from. Then when we get to know them even better, we start to understand the roots of their beliefs. We understand their values, their models, their perceptions. So as you start this journey, I'd like to invite you to reflect on your own behaviors, beliefs, and values, and how you interact with another culture, and how this might affect how you view things. Now, we often notice cultural differences when things go wrong or when we're in conflict situations. So I'd like to share an example of the consequences of not being culturally aware. So here we have an example by Pretty Little Thing. And Pretty Little Thing is an online retailer. And in this example, they created an Eid shop that promoted the images that you can see on the slide. Eid is celebrated by Muslims to mark the end of Ramadan, and it is common for people to buy a new outfit for this occasion. However, there was a backlash because the clothing was deemed inappropriate for Eid. And in this BBC article, it was highlighted that Eid is a time to reconnect with their faith, and hence it was important to practice modesty, wearing loose-fitting clothing, covering your body during Ramadan. Eva, would you like to share an example of when things have gone wrong?
Yeah, sure. So this is another example. This one is about translation going wrong, actually. When Parker Pen launched in Mexico, they used machine translation and translated their campaign line as "it won't leak in your pocket and embarrass you" into Spanish, using the word embarazada for embarrass. But in Spanish, this means to impregnate. So it's a false friend. So their slogan translated to "it won't leak in your pocket and make you pregnant." And I'm sure they were really embarrassed. Now we are going to share some tips on how to localize your Amazon product listings and brand stores in order to attract foreign customers. So next slide, please. Yeah. So when you're ready to start selling to other countries, the first thing you will need to do is to list your products on Amazon Global Selling. Amazon has a beginner's guide on how to start selling on Amazon, which you can find on the link on the second bullet point of this slide. And it has important information such as how to list your products, which information to show, how to format it, etc. It is really important to follow these guidelines because that way your product will be easily found by your target customers. And what's more interesting, the same guidelines apply to other countries. So things like starting the product title with the brand name and having 5 bullet points with a certain number of words each, that can make a big difference. And in a minute, we'll see examples of a good and a bad product listing so that you can have an idea. A good search term optimization is also very important for placing your products at the top of the search. And when you have to localize this for other markets, a simple translation won't be enough. Different countries and cultures search for terms in different ways, so you will need to be aware of this and research terms in other languages, ideally with the help of a translator or a native speaker. And finally, is your copy engaging in both English and the other language? Sometimes you need to transcreate your listing and not just translate them, and that is creating a completely different copy for that market. Now, on the next slide, we'll see an example of a bad product listing. In case you can't read it properly, it reads Felix Solis sold España, red wine, 1 liter, as the title. And then the bullet points read, first up, there's the Grenache grapes, a soft berry fruits, and a touch of spice, wine of Spain. So as you can see, the product title doesn't contain much information, and it only has 3 bullet points, which again don't say much about the product. And also on the bullet points, you can see that the English is not very good. So it was probably a bad translation, maybe a machine translation. And if we compare this to the next slide, this is a listing I was asked to write in English from scratch. It's a Spanish brand of vermouth that wanted to break into the English market, and they opted for writing the copy from scratch in English as opposed to translating it from Spanish. You can't see the title on the screenshot, but the title is El Bandarra Rojo Red Vermouth from Barcelona, made of Macabeo grapes, bittersweet aperitivo, served with ice or as part of a cocktail, 1 liter bottle, 15% ABV. And as you can see, there are 5 bullet points following the same format, and they have relevant information about the product, and the copy is written in a creative way to make it a bit engaging to the reader. I also did the search term research for this, and it got some great results. So when I talk about localization, what does it really mean? Well, localization is a step farther from translation, and it involves translating the words, but also adapting other cultural elements for other markets. And this is a list of some of the most common elements that need to be adapted, not only in product listings, but also product descriptions, brand stores, and your website. So we can see currencies, measuring units, dates and addresses, because their format is different depending on the country, phone numbers, images, symbols, layout, colors, which again have different meanings depending on the culture, videos, where you have to think about the voiceover or the subtitles, and then language variants, and customer service and support. So how are you going to reply to any inquiries in other languages? So there is a deeper level of localization on the next slide for not so obvious cultural elements, and for which you really need to know your overseas consumers if you want to do an effective cultural adaptation. For example, the shopping behavior of your target market. So how do they shop for your product? Which terms they use? Which other items they search for? How do they like paying for them? That's very important. How do they like them shipped, etc.? That changes between cultures. And also the seasonality of the products. For example, Mother's Day, which was recently, it's not the same in the UK and Spain or America. So if you are advertising a Mother's Day gift across several markets, you'll need to be aware of that. And when it comes to dialects, I always have an example. It's a classic example of mine. So the word jumper in UK means sweater, which is a piece of clothing. But in America, it's someone who jumps out of buildings. So remember, you don't only adapt languages, but also dialects within the same language. And this is also important when you adapt search terms. And as I said earlier, a simple translation of the search term might not be enough if you really want to maximize your optimization efforts for those markets. Then on the next slide, can I use machine translation? It's a question that creates a lot of debate in my industry. There are several machine translation tools out there and that many people use for different things. For Amazon, there is a tool called Amazon Translate, but you can use others. And of course, now ChatGPT is becoming very popular, and apparently it can do everything. However, machine translation is just a quick fix. It won't pick up things like the cultural elements I've mentioned. And there are endless examples of machine translations that lack comprehension and accuracy, as we've seen before. And therefore, they won't achieve the audience engagement, the experience, the trust that we want. And interestingly, machine translations won't rank high on Google searches because they are not done by a human. So if you decide to use machine translation, you will most certainly need to have a translator or a native speaker who understands Amazon well, checking and editing those listings in order for them to really be correct and make the right impact. And Janina, you are next.
Brilliant. So building on what we've talked about already, we've looked at culture and translation. We now like to look at about branding. So one of the tools that we use is the Kafara brand identity prism. And, you know, just like being culturally aware, we need to be brand aware in your current or domestic market. And this tool helps us take your brand from local to global. And there are 6 characteristics to focus on. They are physique, personality, culture, relationship, self-image, and reflection. As we go through them, I'd invite you to think about your own brand and what kind of words come to mind when we discuss each of them. So what kind of traits come to mind when we talk about the physique, so the underlying physical characteristics of your brand? So that might be an office, a branded vehicle, or business stationery. How would you describe them? The second one is personality. So what's the character of your brand? Is it agreeable, curious, creative, daring? And very important, particularly when you're exporting your brand into a new culture, is what's your brand culture? So the values of the country from which your brand originates from and its demographic. So you need to be conscious of whether the new market will also appreciate those values. The next one is relationships. So the relationship between your brand and its customers. Is it direct, or are there several different touch points until someone gets to speak to the business owner perhaps? And then there's self-image. So how the customers of your brand see themselves. Do your customers consider themselves like being on trend, or are they eco-friendly, or, you know, how does your branding relate to that self-image? And lastly, it's reflection. So how the brand perceives its audience. This is about the role that your brand plays with your audience. Is your brand, for example, a caregiving brand? Does your brand innovate and want to change how people do things? So with this in mind, and I'd like to look at localizing your value proposition. So to sell more on Amazon, we need to localize your value proposition. In other words, you need to understand the reasons why someone in your target market would be interested to try a new brand, your brand. This is a snapshot of McKinsey & Company report from 2020 showing what consumers in different markets value. Now, I'm aware that this, is during the pandemic, so we need to take this into consideration as things may have changed since then. However, it is interesting to see that all of the markets mentioned cite value as a top reason to buy a new brand. Now, at first glance, this looks like a similarity, but remember the culture tree at the beginning? What we value is influenced by our culture, so there may be indeed differences in how you want to demonstrate value to your target audience. And then lastly, a really important thing to consider. Do you want to stand out, attune, or build a bridge across cultural differences when exporting your brand into a new market? So you may want to stand out in your new market. You may want to change the way a culture does things or looks at things. So for example, in Germany, vegan products have become very popular over the last couple of years. And this is quite a change because Germany is usually known for loving meat products. You might want to attune to the new culture. So you may want your brand to be in tune with the new culture and avoid a mismatch. So for example, in the Chinese market, I've heard that dishwashers are focused on having more space for bowls of different sizes, whereas in the Western markets, the dishwashers are dedicated for space for plates. Or you may want to build a bridge across your culture and the new culture which you're expanding to. So you might want to find something that you can bridge across these cultural differences. So an example of this is yoga. So yoga has Indian origins, but yoga classes have a very similar feel to them. This is because yogis, people who practice yoga, have created a subculture around yoga. The yoga culture is centered around values such as standards, self-discipline, and breathing exercises. So in order to sell more on Amazon, we need to either consider to be standing out, attuning, or building a bridge across these cultural differences. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Can you hear me right? Yes, great. So yeah, it's been there's a lot of information that is quite important and of a lot of value for the sellers. And yes, we are gonna jump in a Q&A. But before that, you can see there the email where you can contact them and have a little bit of an insight with Eva and Janina on how they can help you grow your business within the Amazon platforms or the kind of platforms. Before we jump in the Q&A, I would like to ask you one quick question, if you don't mind. And it's like, well, I can see that you are giving the importance about bringing the products close to your clients, having that kind, breaking that kind of barriers, and yeah, actually making sure that the client loves that product, creating an identity for your branding. But related to this, I wanted to know, like, if are sellers using the video correctly within the Amazon platform? How do you see that kind of, if the video are doing an impact? Because I mean, before that, there's only images, and also that kind of gives you a more security as well as a buyer about the product and also the details. And I don't know if you know where the question is going, but if you can answer that to me, that would be great.
Yeah, do you mean when there's a video instead of the image, or both?
Yeah, both, a mix of both, and giving that kind of more value to the client so that they feel more secure about moving forward and getting acquire the product at the end of the day.
And having more information. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the video is definitely, I will say that it's a great tool, not just for Amazon. It's in general, everyone seems to be using a lot of video. And also it's not so much the video or the image, is, for example, how you put the coding behind the video and the images so that you can be up in the searches. I always have that in mind. But yeah, as a way of engaging with the audience, I think the video, if it's done correctly and if it's ideally in the target market's language, then or with subtitles, that's really good.
Useful.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And when you start working as well, how did you actually do that kind of onboarding with the client? How would you analyze the situation that they are currently on to the point of actually launching them into this kind of strategies that you are building? I would like to also have, if you can explain briefly about that, that would be great.
Yeah. Janina, did you want to, or do you want me to?
I think from a brand point of view, it's about how established is the brand currently in their market and the domestic market. You know, what kind of level of marketing activities do they have? Sometimes we forget that there are different parts to marketing. You know, branding is one of them. Then you have PR, you know, also market research and advertising, and understanding what they already do or whether we need to kind of enhance what they already do, and by creating more activity in the new market as well as tailoring the messages. So it's about understanding where does the brand stem from and kind of what resources are available. But Eva, what would you say about from a translation point of view?
Yeah, I was going to say as a general concept, we make sure we have partners such as yourselves that can take the business throughout the whole cycle, and then we just add in when we need to. So I think that's really important. But yeah, we will normally analyze, as Janina said, what they've done in the past, what they want to achieve. We put a plan together, and then we advise. We offer a free consultation, and then based on what the client needs or we think they could benefit from, then we can build from that. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's great to know. Bruno, do you have any questions?
No, I mean, it was. Thank you for your presentation. So much information, so much things to take, to take care. But I think the most important thing is how do you want to show your products, and for that you have to use the correct words, the correct expressions. Like you said, jumper. I don't want to jump from any building. You know what I mean? I just need a sweater or whatever you want to call it. It depends on the country that you want to address and the people and the market that you want to address. That you have to. It's so important that we can have partners like you, because that there is another way to express in the correct way the features of your product. All that you want to say in the correct words with the correct culture, customs, and market. Absolutely.
Yeah, it always has a better impact if you do it right.
Absolutely. The correct impact. Absolutely. Not even better, but the correct impact. The impact that you want to have, right? Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you, Bruno. And everyone, I believe that yes, we can come to a conclusion that working always with experts is going to make your life easier.
Absolutely.
And also it's going to help you scale and grow within the e-commerce quite easily. So yeah, I believe there's no further questions here. And yeah, it's been a pleasure having you today. And hopefully we can make more of this high valuable content soon. Thank you, Eva and Janina. Pleasure to meet you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.